Okay, welcome to the special committee of the whole meeting. It is January 7th, 2026 at 6:35. Addie, would you call the roll, please?
Cobb.
Here.
Oh, sorry. Larson.
Here.
Posh.
Muscle
Here.
memory.
Whitboy.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Who am I forgetting? Kuda.
I'm here. All right, thank you. So there's a lot on our plate here. Maybe 6, 7 agenda items. Committee assignments. First of all, you know what, actually before the committee assignments, in meetings, do you want to be addressed as counselor, like Cohen or Jessica or councilwoman? Okay. And what's your preference?
Say Councilman do it for you.
Okay. Anybody else have a different preference from what you did last year?
I can be addressed as vice president or counselor, whichever comes out of people's.
Well, I think when you have a title, we say the title,
Okay.
unless you don't want it.
No.
I don't mean the title, but you don't want to be president.
Too late now. Where's mommy?
That was great.
Yeah, so.
Okay, good.
It's gonna slip, and I'm gonna call Jessica as opposed to Councilwoman. And there's no disrespect when I say that. It's a more respectful, I think, using someone's first name at times, but we have a title, I'll do my best.
Okay, I mean, I don't know if anybody's appalled, we can express that. All right, committee assignments. So here's what I have. I've got Councilman Cobb chairing administrative services. Actually, you know what, could you read this, because I don't have I have the committees, but not the.
You don't have to email it, print it out.
I don't.
Give me a second, it's in my office.
Oh.
Sorry, guys.
All right. I have Councilman Cobb chairing administrative services, vice president of planning, and on the safety committee. And if anybody has, we're discussing it, okay? I'm just saying this is what I have so far. Vice President Larson, I have you chairing municipal services, Vice President of Finance, and member of the Administrative Services Committee. Councilman Posh, yours is a little weird, okay? And this will become clear as why it's shook out this way. But you're chairing the Safety Committee and the Finance Committee, and you're Vice President of Parks and Rec.
Community Relations and Recreation. It's technically Community Relations and Recreation, not Parks and Rec.
Right.
We all call it Parks and Rec.
I am on the Planning Committee. And this is, by the way, I'm on 2 committees, just so you know, just so nobody has to serve on 4 committees. I don't want you to think I'm like, oh, I want to do this or I want to do that. A lot of times the council president won't be on any committees. And there's in section 111, I can actually chair all the committees, but I'm not going to be doing any of that. But I'm putting myself on these 2 committees so that everybody's doing the same amount of work, more or less. I mean, obviously Posh has a little bit more work than.
But that could change when you get our 7th member though, right?
No, and you'll see this in a moment.
Oh, okay.
Then, so I'm on planning and I'm vice chair of administrative services. Councilwoman Cohen is chairing planning. You're the vice president of municipal services and you're on the housing committee. Please make sure I'm saying this right, because I'm not looking at what you're looking at. And Councilman DeWitt Foy, you're chairing Parks and Rec. I'm sorry, what is it again? Community
Relations and Recreation.
and Recreation. You're, do I have this right? Vice president of.
Who are we talking about? Sorry.
Vice chair of. Could I have that?
Vice Chair of Safety and Vice Chair of Housing.
Yeah, vice chair of safety and vice chair of housing. And the reason is what's left is finance. So I have the new member. If everything stays the way it is now, and we don't have to keep it exactly this, but if I change what the new member does, somebody else is gonna have to change what they're doing. And there will be people that will be vice chair of two committees or whatever. There's no way to do it, so everybody's a chair, a vice chair, still need this. And a member. So this person would be chairing the housing committee. They would be vice chair of municipal services. Or did I give that to somebody already?
I am.
Jessica.
You gave that to me.
Yep. Nope, that's not what I have.
Oh, so what do you have?
I've used member of municipal services.
Okay.
Okay, then this person would be vice chair of municipal services, and they would be a member of the finance committee. And that would round out, there would be somebody in every position.
So do I not have a vice chair?
Well, I have you,
Housing.
Oh, I thought that was
Housing.
council. Oh, so you said Councilman DeWitt Foy was vice chair of housing, so is he just on housing? Or you have both of us?
That's, you duplicated, yeah.
Yeah, you did duplicate it on here. On here.
okay, so
Well, that's because.
actually on here I had Councilman DeWitt Foy as a member of housing.
That makes sense, because he's also, you also
Yeah.
said vice chair of safety, so now we each have
Mhm.
one and one.
Mhm.
Yes, that's correct.
So that, okay,
Can you talk just for 1 or 2 minutes about the meeting times? Because we have a group, with our new formation, we have some people who not able to meet, like let's take municipal services. I had it at 10 in the morning because
I mean, you
Davida
have
was.
committees, got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's do
So,
that.
and then when you're on a lot of committees, when they meet up, one committee meets on Wednesday night, one meets on Thursday, and I have two that I am liaison to that are citizen committees. Is there a thought or some way we could like have committee night, like the second and fourth Monday of each month, where you might only have an hour for your meeting, but I think in most cases it's doable, and if it's not, if there's something major going on with a specific committee, that committee might go a bit longer, and then one of the things that Addie did was she asked us to schedule a monthly meeting for each of our committees that we chair, so it's on the calendar, because as Addie would say, you can always cancel. So those are my 2 points.
I would be greatly in favor of that. One, for setting consistent expectations, not only for us, but also the public,
Yeah.
because that is very hard to follow when there's something coming up and people want to attend.
Yeah.
But also, I think from a accommodation standpoint of everybody's obligations, knowing that just every Monday night, unless something is canceled, is committed, I think would be very effective.
I'm fine with that, and do we want to talk about when you would like your individual committees to meet? Or is this too
I'm not ready
soon?
to do that, I just
Okay.
wanted to get a consensus tonight.
This, I would, what I was thinking when Vice President Larson suggested that was that we would just slot them in 5, 6, 7 PM. 8, we have 7 committees, right?
On like the second.
The second and the fourth Monday, so we'd have 3 on one Monday and 4 on the other Monday, and we can go earlier.
That's
No, I'm sorry, which Monday would this be, the second?
The second and the fourth.
Okay,
You'd have to start at 5 o'clock on one of those, so the people on that committee would need to be available at 5.
Right.
So that's just a consideration.
and it'd be nice if you were on 2 committees if they met.
Oh,
right?
that's not gonna work out that well, but
No.
you know.
I mean, that would be,
Try.
that would take some genius, you know. We got that in this room?
Guess I'm making a Gantt chart or something.
Put it in AI. Put it in AI. It'll be done.
I-
Put it in
I
ChatGPT. It'll
know.
be done in 30 seconds.
That's true.
I'd like to put dibs in on for the fourth Monday
For admin.
which is when I was holding them before.
That's fine.
Creature of habit.
It's fine. That would be, that I could do that. I can make it happen for you, just for you.
Isn't that a council rule about seniority?
So I could make it happen.
So we'll do all
We can play
that
that
through.
card.
Yeah, I'll
Just
put together a
council
schedule,
meeting.
send it out, and if everyone's
Play
good,
with
then
it,
we're good.
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so everybody's gonna contact Clerk Ballister. Now, we never asked you.
Honestly, in this room, I don't care. Out there, call me Clerk Ballister.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's fine.
I've never asked you that question in 3 years.
Well, I think it's a little weird for us because, you know,
Yeah.
you're teacher, so.
You have a preference?
But I think it's good that we
I'll
call
call
you
her
Clerk
No,
Ballister.
about your meeting.
That has actually
I think
been
it's best
suggested
to try
by
to
some people from
tee
the public.
two up together, so
Okay, good.
I'll see
The
about
other
the
thing
safety
about
meeting
that is
doing
for
the same time as
Steve
yours.
Barker,
Yes, that's another, yeah.
Right,
staff
the less time we
consideration.
have to,
Yeah.
Just,
Just before we move off that, I'm happy with these, but if it would be helpful to take on a fourth and be a member of a second so that, you know, one of the ones that you're on, or if it breaks down another way, just so you're aware, I would be happy to take on a fourth if that's helpful.
I mean, I kind of hang around anyway, you know, but thank you, you know,
It's creepy sometimes.
yeah. Thank you.
So
So just one little thing about committees, I'm staying on the topic just for a moment. You know, obviously there will be times when I'll be referring stuff to your committee, legislation. I also think it's, you know, we've had people come and go in the last 4 years. There have been some people that are like, hey, I don't do anything but refer legislation. You know, I look favorably on, you know, it being an incubator for ideas, legislation, you know, your own or your committee members, and just, you know, discussion on that level too. You know, it's I don't think I wouldn't say, you know, oh, you should only meet if and when you have legislation. Go ahead.
So the last couple of years, we've reacted too much to legislation as opposed to collaboratively work. I mean, typically I would think that the way that these council committees were initially envisioned is the legislation comes forth or a discussion about legislation, it gets settled in the committee and then it eventually comes out. I mean, there was very little time the last couple of years with the former administration and the mayor, just because they couldn't get their act together, is that stuff would show up and we'd have to vote on it right away, and it never went to committee and it was never discussed. And I'd like to see it go more like the way it was, I think, initially planned to go, especially the finance stuff. I mean, we'd always get the finance stuff at the very, very last minute.
So Vice President Larson and I had a talk with the mayor about this
Tuesday.
Tuesday. That was just yesterday? Oh my goodness. I mean, it seems like, okay, and we have a plan, I would say. We have a plan. We understand the timeline. It's gonna take you, us, the law department, looking at you. I'm talking about especially, and obviously the mayor, to be on the same page and be resolute. I completely agree. I think this was an appropriate time to bring it up. We need to do better. There's way too much stuff that's, you know, we gotta have it now. And we need to differentiate poor planning from real emergencies.
Yep.
And that was the focus of and we are gonna have a meeting about this at an appropriate time, probably after the first staff meeting. Yeah.
We actually have a metric. Because if we see that the majority of our legislation is first reading, consideration for adoption requested, that's backwards from what it should be. That should be minimal, and we should have more of our legislation in there for first, second, and hopefully not third, but. So that is our metric.
That's how we
That's our
know.
goal.
Right.
All right, Councilman? Okay, council vacancy. So we have to talk about process here. We can't talk about process in executive session. I'm fine with later on in our executive session, but process-wise, we need a timeline and a methodology. We have 60 days from the first, so we know that's the amount of time we have. We have 11 applicants. Do we want to interview? Do we want to do any written questions before we do the interview? You know, when we're interviewing people, we can certainly ask extemporaneous questions, follow-up questions as well. But do we want to create some standard questions that we would like them to prepare for? I will tell you, I have some questions that I would like to ask that are not written. I want to see what people say in real time. But I also have questions that I would like the person to take some time to think about and maybe even do, you know, it'll be up to them. They want to do a little bit of research, but I'd be interested to see both. That's my feeling, but let's hear from you all about process.
I think the biggest issue is trying to figure out a schedule with this and get that schedule booked, even though if we're gonna do interviews, we don't even have the interviews set at that time, but at least we know amongst ourselves, we're interviewing on Wednesday, January 32nd, or whatever it might be. I mean, I think we really need to try to get a sense of when these are and share that with the applicant pool. I do think we need to do face-to-face interviews.
Well, I do, and I'm maybe when we have a discussion about, and I don't know what's going to happen, but when we have a discussion about the specific people, you know, do we want to interview everybody? Do we want to look at the applications and interview, you know, some candidates that we think meet a standard that we agree on? You know, we'll see about that, but
I would think we're gonna shortlist some.
But whether we do or not, traditionally, we have had the League of Women Voters involved. Is there any appetite for that?
Oh, I forgot about that.
I would like to see the interviews be recorded. It doesn't necessarily have to be done by the League of Women Voters, but I do think we had done that years ago. Can't even remember who was interviewing at the time. They're still up on YouTube, they're still available, but I do think that and I know that wasn't the case with the last round that was done in December, but I do think it's valuable in the interest of transparency to have those recorded and posted. And I would also say that I say that envisioning a short list, that we are not interviewing everyone, that we are interviewing the ones we feel are the best
Well,
candidates.
just so you know, the League of Women Voters interviewed everybody and recorded everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think what we do in terms of the League of Women Voters is gonna depend on how many people we wanna end up interviewing. The last time we didn't have them involved, we only interviewed 4 people, and I can't recall, what did we have? We had about 10 or 11, a similar number of applicants. I'm open to doing it either way. I think that if we're gonna bypass the League of Women Voters, we need to allow for a longer interview time than we traditionally have, I think.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I would like to see us interview, and I'd like us to do it off of a short list. The reason they weren't recorded is because they were done during executive sessions, so because there's some personnel protections, I guess, is what it would be my understanding. That's how we did it that way.
Yeah.
So, but I would like to see us get a schedule set up pretty quickly, and I think Councilor Cobb has a really great point about making them a bit longer if we're going to shortlist that, because they were 15 minutes. For some it was okay, but for like we're looking at planning commission members, that's just not enough time.
Well, we have to see what the short list is. If it's like 4 or 5 people, we could probably do 30 minutes, you know. But if it's 10 people, I'm just saying, you know, that would go on for days. As far as the recording goes, I mean, this is ultimately a personnel issue, and the kinds of questions and some of the information that is discussed, some of it's very sensitive. I can say that, and that tends to get left out in a public interview.
So I hear that. Perhaps we can, to your point about having some standard questions that we want all interviewees to answer, perhaps that is something we can do that League of Women Voters could do by Zoom and record it fairly easily with the candidates, 15 minutes for a few questions. And then we can also interview them in executive session.
I would say at the very least, we could publish, you know, the question,
the written
responses. Yeah.
Related, but in years past, when the League of Women Voters has done the interviews and recorded them, has council also met in executive session to interview?
Yes, eventually. It's a big step, and it's, you know, we don't really, I mean, there's pluses and minuses to the League of Women Voters. They're very generous with their time
And just to confirm, my understanding is that this appointee will serve for 2 years. So that's
Correct.
essentially half a term.
it's, yeah, this is not a 2-month appointment. I agree.
I believe the League of Women Voters would be willing, because I was the liaison, the contact, to do the interviews, howsoever. I also think there's a timing thing. We need to get somebody on board as soon as we can. And that adds another couple of weeks.
At a minimum, 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a
Do
minimum.
we want to do that?
I would say yes, because it's a 2-year term. And I think when you go through an election cycle, the community gets to hear from you. They get to see you in events. You know, that doesn't happen in an appointment process. And I think it's important that the community sees the people. I went through the process and it was in 45 days. And I think whoever was on council at the time, maybe 3 of you, I think you got it done in 30-some days total. I think you got it done pretty quick, and there were still League of Women Voter interviews. I don't know, that feels better to me.
I would be in favor of asking the League of Women Voters if they're comfortable interviewing all of the applicants, set of maybe 5 standard questions that we help contribute to. Get through all of those, and then we shortlist after that to bring candidates in.
That was the one thing we struggled with, that the league wanted to put their own questions together. Do you remember that?
I do.
That would be fun.
so
if maybe we can.
They weren't objectionable questions. They addressed things we were concerned about, but that was the thing that they asked about.
You know, I would prefer, listen, it's majority rules. And I'd prefer that we just do a real scrutiny with, keep it in-house. Maybe have 1 round of interviews. If we narrowed it down to 2 people, we bring them back, that kind of thing. But I'll go with the majority.
Can I suggest that we return to this after executive session when we have a chance to discuss, like when we come back from executive session, because it's hard to talk about this without having a sense from everybody if we're talking about 4 people, 5 people, 7 people, 10 people, 11 people. And just to make the final decision.
I agree, but just understand that traditionally the league has interviewed everybody. That's what they've done. And we've used that to narrow it down. My question is, I'm fine with revisiting this after executive session, because maybe there's more context with the, going through the applications. So do you want to do that? Everybody okay with that? Yeah. And we'll just move on with the agenda. So Addie, make sure I do that. All right, yearly calendar. So, here we are. It's January. We traditionally take 1 month a year. In the middle of the year, we know what we have kind of coming at us, legislation and we got severance, we got Shaker Lakes, we got, some big issues, and then, a lot of the appropriation stuff comes up, pretty quick. But it'll be June before we know it. And then, so we've been taking July off, the month of July. But we don't have to. Let's say you, and then just so you know, when we come back, it's budget season, basically, and we're getting ready for
Intense.
that. Yeah. So what does people prefer? Anybody prefer not taking any time off? Well, there's a hands down, but
If we are going to take time off, I would suggest August. It seems like for the last few years, June trickles into July, and August is more when people in general are taking vacations and
I will say, having talked to a bunch of different clerks from different cities, August seems to be the month that most
Congress
cities
takes off in
takes
August.
off, yeah, so just.
I'm in favor of that.
I'm gonna be the stick in the mud because July is when my daughter's off, and that's when we have family time, so, but majority rules, so.
I don't have a preference.
why don't we do second, what, does it have to be an absolute month? Can we do
Yeah,
second?
some people do,
We could go
some people do
middle of
second,
July to middle of August. I mean,
Yeah.
like
No, I
canceling
mean,
the
I just-
second and the first meeting.
That would
Yeah.
work.
Yeah,
Mayor, the only reason I'm bringing you into this is administratively, is there any problem with us not being here, at some particular month of?
I'm not aware of anything right now, but would I be able to get back to you, check with some
Yeah,
of the staff
sure.
members and get back?
Would the middle of July to the middle of August, I don't know, is that better? I don't even know.
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, because the first couple of weeks of August is normally before school starts.
Right.
Right, I mean, when does school start for your kids?
Well, it starts around Labor Day, but my husband goes back when CHUH goes back, so that's when
And that would still,
Middle-
that's the middle of August.
Right,
and that would
so
still,
that would kind of
That
work for you.
no, that works.
Okay,
and that would still work.
your kids are
Same-
not there
same.
yet, right?
Yeah, same calendar.
Cause I've got my conference in July, so it's always worked out, but it would work out even if we did half and half.
You want to at least tentatively, and I mean, I don't know why we would change it, but, I mean,
And I think as this has come up, if something emergent does come up, then
Yeah.
we can schedule a special meeting, but at least have something on the books planned that this is the time when we're planning on recessing.
I like to go to the Newport Jazz Fest, and it's that first week of August. So when we're in July, I would have to really do that. Was kind of
We do also talk about trying not to schedule meetings during the end of December.
right. That's the other
I
part.
mean, it's not a legislation we need to pass, but it's just a consideration for the holidays that we can have some time.
And I will say this year, the second meeting in December is the 21st, which is
Oh,
not a
really?
great, fantastic date
I
to
didn't
have.
look at that. So what I like to do, and Addie and I have done this, I think the last 2 years. We schedule the first 2 weeks. We have a scheduled meeting the first week of December, and then we just have a placeholder the second Monday. And that way, if there's anything kind of funky with the budget, we have that there. Feasibly, if we were to pass the budget in the second week and the transfers were, in place, we could just, kind of have that be. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've never had a problem if we've needed to schedule a special meeting when there's been a recess. Now, with Zoom and the ability to vote, it shouldn't be a problem if we have to hold a meeting because we got to get something passed.
Right. So I think that'll work. And having moved the budget date up to November 1st. It, you know, this year was or last year was a little bit of an anomaly, but it time-wise, it worked out. You know, I think the third reading was the 15th, right? You know, so, okay, good. Council processes, I guess I'm just asking the two new kids, did
Those again, I printed it out for
The
everyone.
40-year-old.
did we have any,
Technically,
Are they
Jenny is
40?
younger than me. We
Okay.
are, we are.
but did, as you went through you know, here's the legislative process and the economic development, was there anything that you wanted to discuss about those processes? I actually wasn't here.
I put together a lovely flow chart for you guys too that I printed out for you
Okay.
guys here,
Oh.
just to
here
make
we
it a
go.
little
Okay.
hopefully easier to understand.
I think we'll figure it out. We
Yeah.
know it.
I mean,
Nothing top of mind, but like as we go through the process.
well, the main idea is that if you wanna go to the law department with your, you know, an idea that you wanna make into legislation, that you'll have, at the very least, come to committee of the whole and said, this is something I'm thinking about, you know, like Evita came forward, like, I wanna do a dog park, or, you know, is the majority of council okay with it? What we don't want is people to tie up the law department's time with an idea that
No.
that nobody's interested in, or worse, people actually don't want it. And then, you know, we got staff time getting worked up. So that's kind of the main thing. Now you can incubate that in your committee and bring it forward. You can incubate it in somebody else's committee. Now, there's nothing stopping a member from going to a committee you're not on and saying, hey, I have an idea for this, and you know, you maybe want to start there. You can start there if you want, but what you have to do is come to committee of the whole at some point and have a majority of the members say, yes, go ahead with this. And it's an informal thing, but then you know, again, then you can make an appointment with the law department. On the economic development process, I think the biggest sticking point on economic development projects that are on public property was, when do we go to the community? My feeling has been that when there's legislation in front of us and then we go to the community, there's a lot of people that say, hey, you know, this is kind of like a done deal thing, and we don't feel comfortable with this. And so, you know, we could kind of bake that into that process. I think it's very important that the planning department gives us a timeline, you know, so we can watch and predict, not to the day, but, you know, we're gonna, you know, for instance, we're gonna have community engagement here. We're going to have, we're gonna send it to the planning commission this month. You know, it's gonna come back to council in this month. We're gonna wanna do it at least 2 readings. You know, that kind of thing, so we see it laid out. And Director Zamp is very good about briefing us in executive session about economic development deals. Remember, we don't discuss those in public if they're pending and not legislation yet. Yes.
One point on that, one of the things that I, part of my policy platform for the campaign was having a better understanding of what property we actually own as the city, and having some sort of report from the planning department as to what properties we own, and have that be made available on the website, so it's very clear what we own and what is private property, because I think that that's another point of confusion when we have economic development deals. So,
I see the mayor typing, so that's good.
well, and we've talked about this, you know, as well, but I just want to add that I think that that will help create more clarity if we can get that done before we have deals in front of us.
Okay, anything else on this topic? Moving along, council chambers design. So I just have a couple of things I'm gonna throw out, but have at it. the placing of the podium, that, keep in mind that some things are done because of where the cameras are, okay? Have some residents used their position to be behind the podium and hold up signs or make faces? Yes, that has happened. Do we want to move the podium back to where it was before, which was close to where the screen is? Somebody said council should be over there, but that's where the screen is. That we should move the whole shebang over. I don't know. I'm not crazy about where Addie sits, but
I don't mind being in the corner.
to me, that's like,
I don't wanna be on camera,
okay.
so I don't care.
I'd like to bring up a related issue, is that we have a very engaged community. And we have seen that it is very hard to fit everyone who wants to be at council meetings in council chambers, particularly when there are significant issues on the agenda. So that's something that I think maybe we explore. It doesn't, not tonight, obviously, but at what point do we hold meetings in larger venues when we know that there will be significant public attendance? Because I have been one of those people stuck in the hallway as a community member, and you can't hear anything and you can't see anything. And we're lucky the fire chief doesn't come and break us up. And so that's, the limited capacity of the room is troublesome to me.
The biggest issue with that is Steve Barker having to move, a lot of equipment to another venue. It can be done and it has been done.
Could we not live stream it here and invite people? There's another maybe 20 or 25 seats.
That
there.
has been done a couple of times.
Down in the atrium.
That too.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a TV down there as well.
By the way, was your ceremony recorded?
It was not, but we had the option to record it. So I suppose that you could consider holding a meeting down there. I was told that it does not, granted, I suspect that it would be single camera, but I was told that it was not too much work to set up the AV equipment if I wanted to have that recorded.
But your swearing in ceremony was not recorded in the atrium?
It was not. I said that I didn't feel that it was needed, but I was provided that option.
Okay.
I was just thinking of the live streaming, because that's what we're
That's a great
talking
idea.
about. Live streaming has been done down the atrium when we've had overflow. We've advertised it that way, in fact, so.
So let's address that with Assistant Director Barker. Annie, can you do that for me? Thank you. What else about, I know we need chairs. I'm sorry.
Addie needs a new chair and we all need new chairs. We all need new chairs. I don't like when, especially for those of us when you sit on the ends, you either have to do this or you have to have somebody
It should-
move back this way. Even with this table tonight, same thing. It's
Curvature.
like, we don't have a visual of each of us. And it's a bit easier to do it in here, but I know it would be expensive, but if we could just put a curve in there.
And along those lines, your dais is not accessible.
That's
There's a
true.
step.
That's right.
That's true.
So,
Neither one of them are.
like, there's a step up, you can't.
Yeah. So who would we start that discussion with possibly?
Well, the people that
Jim and I can meet and.
did, they did we have people that do that work.
We can decide.
And I don't know, Eugene and,
Virginia. If you'd like, we could, like Addie said, sit down and try to explore some options, maybe price out some things and come back, and that might help to inform your decision.
Thank you.
I agree, even a mild curve, just to not take up too much space.
More than this curve, but
Right. Oh, no, this is barely a curve, but I mean, just something more than this, but less than, a semicircle,
Yeah.
Mr.
to
President.
be ADA accessible is really,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's true. Yes.
If I could, we are actively looking at chairs. And so Josie identified a few options. I'm hoping that we can get sample chairs so that we can try them out before ordering 100 or 200 of them. So more information to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I did email back about the chairs for the dais of my chair. So those should be picked out and good to go. But for the seating chairs for everyone else, for the audience, we'll have to take some time.
The next topic, are we ready to move on? Is legislative agenda. I took the liberty of writing out some stuff that I see coming. If it's okay with you, I'll just, go through that. But I'd like to break this up into kind of two categories. One is, stuff that we're all gonna be involved, well, we'll all be involved in everything. But, if you have some individual ideas for legislation that you want to get started on, sooner than later, this would be the time to bring that up. We know that severance, zoning, eventually TIFs and tax abatements will be coming up. We know that, already come up the zoning part. We also know that the Shaker Lakes Sewer District proposal will be forthcoming. So that's just, kind of heads up. The Noble and Taylor Merchants Associations. Since you're the planning chair, where are you on that in working with that community we've gotten to the point where we're working on legislation. Assistant Law Director, where are we on that part?
I know that there was an exchange of red lines between Bill and NABA's counsel. And I think they are close to, last time I spoke to Bill about it, they're close to.
On the agreement, right?
Yes.
So,
But that's only on Noble, sorry.
yeah,
And my understanding, and again, this, Bill sort of took over point on this, so my information might be a little out of date, but my understanding was that the NABA agreement was going to be the template for the Taylor agreement. And so once we get the Noble agreement locked in, that's going to be the Taylor agreement.
and there's one executive director for both. Is that true?
Last I heard, yes.
Okay. So that's our point of contact?
I believe so.
Okay.
I'm happy to pick it up if it's appropriate for me to have some visibility into what's happening, but I would appreciate if Bill or you want to let me know, how they see the process rolling out once there's a
I mean,
contract.
it's been in, in committee, back in, so, I don't know if that's necessary, but I think it would be good for you to review if you can send her the legislation
Absolutely.
and,
And I'll be
You've
glad to
been
give
very
you the
involved.
backstory, yeah.
Well, I had watched all the meetings, but I'll
Yeah.
refresh my memory.
I mean, there's no need, we're not like saying, just for people listening, we're not talking about going back to the drawing board,
No.
but, we do, this is our first business meeting, where we're, so I just wanna make sure we're all on the same page. All right, so do we wanna put that on, I guess we can't say now whether or not we would put that on the January 20th, so let's discuss that in the leadership meeting tomorrow. And then we'll share that information with Council Cullen. So we have, okay. All ARPA money has to be spent that's still in the ARPA. I'm not talking about the money that's been shifted to revenue replacement.
Yeah.
But the money that is still in ARPA funds, we need a, and Andy, maybe we can put this on the committee of the whole agenda. We need a report from the planning department, where are we at, and some type of schedule, so we're monitoring and aware of the December 31st deadline and where we're at.
We'll see if it on the 20th.
The other thing is, and this is a personal concern, but I think council, so we still have money being spent on the exterior repair program, which covers a lot of stuff. It's like $2.5 million. Now that money is in revenue replacement. The thing that I'm concerned about is not, we don't have a strict timeline on that, but we need to make sure that the administration is ready to roll out this, I don't know, we need to know how much money is left in it. And we need to make sure that it's rolled out in a timely manner. It was not rolled out in a timely manner last year. And timely, I mean, talking about exterior repairs.
No.
They're done when the weather's good. People aren't doing exterior repairs, in January. But this is the time that needs to be put in place. So in March, when people are hiring contractors and doing that kind of work for April, May, June, and beyond, so we just need that information. The community investment fund, we need to, does that need to be spent this year?
Some of that is ARPA, some of it is not, but what does need to get spent is the business assistance grants. I don't know how much of that has gotten out yet. Some of that was designated as revenue replacement, and some of it is ARPA dollars, and those do need to get expended.
Is any legislation necessary for any of that? Or is it just because it's been held?
Don't believe at the level of expenditures, at the level of the grant sizes that were contemplated, I don't believe so.
Okay.
The funds were encumbered through, I believe, and there were a couple of these, so I might be getting them backwards. I haven't looked at it in a minute, but it was UBIZ that was doing the business development grants. So those funds were encumbered with UBIZ directly. So for the city's purposes, it's all encumbered and it's really going out the door as fast as UBIZ can find eligible and I'll leave it eligible applicants.
So contact Brian Iorio, through Director Zanft, and see if they can prepare something for the 20th.
Yeah, he's already gonna be here because we're doing a CDBG presentation on it as well, so.
Right, but
We talked about at least minimally quarterly during this year when we have to have those funds expended by the end of the year, so.
Right.
He might be on base every once in a while. But you have to know what's going on.
The Arts Commission, the Planning Commission, any other appointments, I guess we'll discuss that. I mean, not the Arts Commission, but we have appointments to make and we gotta get that thing up and running. That's like 2 years of sitting around. I did have Loretta, who's the office manager, contact all the Arts Commission applicants and the 2 or 3 appointees
3.
that have been sitting around for 2 years. I did say, have her contact them through email and say that we're going to get to this in January. I hope I know that I was just hoping, but let's get right on that. And by that, I don't mean that we necessarily have the appointments on January 20th, but that we on January 20th are reviewing and Councilman Cobb's committee, you know, we know who we're gonna, who we're looking at, you know, the applications and so forth, and we get this moving, right? I mean,
We can do that. I'm gonna have to have a lengthy administrative services committee meeting. And may require 2 to get through all of these boards. I still need any art applications that came in since I think since December 3rd. I know there have been some more recent ones. Are these going through? Because I haven't gotten them through Formsite. Are people applying at the mayor's?
They
Can we get with
Steve,
Steve and just make sure there's one portal, thank you.
good.
I was just going to suggest that if city council's okay with it, rather than having 2 different intake forms, I think I would be happy with just a single form where they can have a drop down that specifies, okay, I'm applying for this or that, and then we're all choosing from the same applicant pool.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it's confusing now.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is, you know where I stand on this.
So
The-
are there any objections to that, to working
No.
towards having a single intake form? Okay.
I would look favorably on 2 meetings this month only because we're backed up.
If I could request that the Arts Commission applications be sent to me and on behalf of Councilman DeWitt Foy also, because we didn't get anything from whatever was
No,
done.
everybody should always have access to everything.
Well, I think
When
because
we
they
weren't
came in
here.
with-
We
Right.
just started,
Yeah.
so that's, so
Yeah.
whatever you've already
I got
received,
you.
we need the
I
whole
got you.
packet,
Right.
yeah.
And I
But
wanna put
thank you,
together
I
a
appreciate
singular
that
package.
that we should always get everything,
Yeah,
but
everybody gets everything.
Eddie, does council have its own sub drive on the G drive?
Yes,
Okay.
but
So
they don't have access to it because they don't have a VPN.
Because we're not employees.
So I wanna go through, I'm trying to do a lightning round here because I wanna hear from you guys, but I have a long list and I just need to go through it. I wrote down here scheduling confirmation hearings for mayoral appointments, so we don't have any appointments right now, but I just want you to be mentally and what's the other word?
emotionally.
No, I mean, just like time-wise aware that we're probably going to, at some point, the mayor's gonna come to us and say, I would like you guys to have a special meeting so that we could not interview, I don't know, what's the right word?
Fat?
Yeah, that the candidate that the mayor's putting forward, so that, you know, maybe, let's just say we have a meeting, you know, like a regular meeting scheduled on a Monday, that we might have to have a special meeting, because I think it's impractical to say, we'll meet at 5:30 on a Monday, vet the candidate and vote at 6, and vote that same day, because that's not really vetting. You know, that's just, right? I understand that it's more meetings and, but
There's transparency there though.
we don't, this doesn't happen that often where you got, new mayor, there happen to be 3 vacancies right now. But I just want you to know it's coming. We don't know the timeline, but you're doing interviews, you're getting there,
Would
right?
you like me to provide an update?
Please.
So firstly, there is forthcoming legislation reappointing Bill Hanna, Eric Zanf, and Colette Clinkscale. In addition to that, regarding the HR director, city administrator, and finance director, we have received, I would say, about 50 applications for the city administrator position, and fewer, but still quite a bit of applications for the other 2 positions. We have had first round interviews with city administrator for, I believe, 12 people. And on Monday, we had second round interviews with 3 people, with 2 more second round interviews tomorrow. With regard to finance director, we had second round interviews, I believe, with 3 people. And I'm doing some additional research on one of those candidates who seemed particularly strong. With regard to HR, I think that we have now received about 40 applications. Today, there were second round interviews for 2 of them. Since the initial interviews, there were about 10 or 12 additional ones that came in. And from that pile today, I felt that one of them should receive an interview. So I suspect that we are getting closer to having candidates. But for me personally, I have a greater emphasis on finding people who are the right fit over speed. In the case of the finance director, Andy Unetic, who is here on a contract basis, is pretty flexible with how long he stays with the city. He just wants to wrap up by mid-March for family reasons. So that's sort of a current overview of it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that people might have.
Thank you. I had suggested that we have an overhaul of our housing code. I'm not suggesting that now as like for purposes, but I want you to know that that's coming. We haven't done a comprehensive review of that in many, like decades.
Was that included in the RFQ that went out for a comprehensive review of the planning code? I believe it
No.
was.
That's,
No.
that was purely zoning.
Yeah.
And did not include anything about housing.
And in my talks with Director Hannah, it's his belief that we would probably have to find a consultant for that, because in-house it's quite an undertaking. But I'm just throwing that out there as something that may be coming. We have really never come up with a policy on how we grant money to, stuff like the Music Hop, and there's a lot of people coming and saying, hey, I'd love to have. And I think we need to have a discussion in that. I'm not sure if the finance, I would kind of like to, I would not want to have a 15-minute discussion on that in committee of the whole and consider that to be, where in committee of the whole, it's really tough to get deep in it, really anything. Do it occasionally when we have to, because we need 7 people moving quickly on a topic and we'll take a half hour or something like that. But yeah, go ahead.
Why don't we just ask the finance committee to do it? So if someone makes a, Gail?
What do you think?
Because the last discussion we had during budget hearings was that Jessica Shantz and somebody from finance, it could be you, could be me, would discuss how we could put a form up there that was vetted by the law department, where people could come onto the form online and apply. And then that request necessarily wouldn't come to council. It would, from what our last discussion was, it would go to the administration. So now you're wanting to take it back into council, is that right?
I think that there are enough times when people come to council and ask for money that we need some type of policy. And even if the policy just is how we review, let's say, I'm only using the Music Hop because I haven't written that. We would do this with any entity. That we review afterwards, the performance of the event and the worthiness of it to fund again and so forth.
Because we need to talk about maximum requests. We had a request last year for $100,000 that really wasn't vetted as far as I was concerned.
And we have to have a budget for it. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, and the budget right now is not in council, it is in community relations. Is it in communications?
I have to check on that.
Yeah, it's not in council right now.
But that's where the budget is, but the decision is a legislative decision.
Necessarily, it's under 50,000.
Right, that's what.
Well, of course, the mayor could just say, we're gonna put money towards that, but
And that becomes city sponsored too, Tony. That's one of the things that's made me a bit uncomfortable, President Kuda, pardon me, about when we give money with the way we've done it
yeah,
before, like the Music Hop. The city if it comes from the city, then we can say the city sponsored this event.
I mean,
Doesn't that what we want? We want it to look
that's what
like,
we want. I don't see why why it can't start legislatively and the administration we do a lot of things where we pass legislation and the administration carries it out. I mean, the question I think becomes, do we want to be the budget authority, over this kind of a thing? I would argue that that's within our scope, but go ahead.
I would broaden the question because we have had a number of nonprofit organizations that worked with the city prior to the former administration, but then found themselves unable to work with the city or those partnerships severed or abandoned. And one of the things that I would like to see is a better understanding of what our nonprofit partnerships are. So I actually think this is a broader question of who are we working with in terms of nonprofits? Who are we sponsoring in terms of funding, but also resources? Because one of the questions that I've heard come up over the last year is, well, if the city has sponsored something, why are we not putting it in the newsletter? Why are we not publicizing it? What is our responsibility? And so I think all of those are questions that if we had a policy or procedures, document.
I think that aspect of it, the leadership should be working out with, so we'll put that on our Tuesday meeting agenda. Yes.
One of the things that we've added to our work plan for the first quarter is an inventory of the nonprofit groups that we're currently working with and recently worked with,
Good.
so that we can try to understand what relationships we need to maintain or rebuild.
So thank you for being willing to take that on in your committee as far as the policy end of it goes.
Sure, let's do it.
Yes.
So as the budgetary authority, I understand that, it's under our discretion to allocate those funds, but is there a reason it would need to come to council on a one-off basis and it wouldn't be part of the annual budget, a set, whether that's 50 or 100 or whatever that is, and that we put that into the budget on an annual basis, and then the administration handles the individual requests? Because that's not how we're currently doing it. So is there a reason?
The requests have been coming to council. We could refer every request to the administration.
If you had a set, I just went around at the end of the year and I worked a little bit with Gail and I sent her over a council funding request policy and guidelines, just kind of a draft to get things
it's a
going.
good start.
So if anyone wants to take a look at that, I'd be happy to send it to you guys,
Mm.
just as a
I would
very initial start.
just be cautious about opening the floodgates for people asking for money from council in the city. And I think to put something on the website inviting that to happen, should be a concern. I think there's, 7 or 8 citywide events that we have sponsored that I think is a good idea to continue sponsoring. But I don't know that I would open up an application process. If people want to have special money, I think they should reach out either to the administration or council and ask that this be supported on an individual basis.
I would just say this, as a policy, we could say, oh, well, this mayor, would probably be, but as a policy, I would just say that there were some things that just happened, and I don't know what future mayors are gonna do, but the question as a policy matter, if council wants to be a budget authority and have oversight authority, then we need to be making those decisions. And if we're not doing it, I can tell you from the past 4 years, there's a lot of stuff that happens that gets spent. And I'll even bring up one event where the event was actually advertised before we voted on it, and it was over $50,000. And I don't know that a council should be in that position. I'm talking about as a policy. We could look at this mayor and go, oh, this probably won't happen. But that's not the question that I want to answer. I want to answer, is that a good idea for other councils and other mayors to go from. You know, that's why I'm challenging what you're saying, because I'm.
But that situation you brought up, and that could happen again, happened in the current system.
Well, if the precedent is set that nothing happens unless council allocates, then it's a lot easier to say no, because we were in a, kind of a, I don't know.
Yeah, but we should, we should not be micromanaging how the mayor is spending money on events unless it exceeds the budget or the contract limit. And the only reason that the former mayor came to us was because that contract exceeded $50,000, where he had put this event on in prior years, spending a significant amount of money and never sought our approval, nor do I think any mayor would need to. If the current mayor wants to say, I want to spend $15,000 out of what's already been budgeted for, let's say, the music hop, or $5,000 for this 5K race, that's not something he needs council approval to do.
And we don't micromanage any of that. We just, all we did was say, we approved it in a piece of legislation. That way we know what's going on. So we passed legislation, we didn't change the cap, right? We just changed, Eddie, remind me. We didn't change the cap, we just put what has to be published
Correct.
in the contracts. Okay, well, I mean, that's at least some transparency that we didn't have before. Is it 7,500? Okay.
Yes.
Any appetite for legislation to lower the amount of money that? Okay. Ranked choice voting. So we talked about this towards the end of the year as something we would look at this year. So, yes.
I'd like us to see it do it. I mean, we've already have language already developed by the charter review, the former charter review committee. We sort of parked it. We probably need to have a conversation amongst ourselves in a public. We probably need to have some kind of conversation to see if we actually want to move forward with it. But I'm looking forward to having that conversation and trying to get something on the ballot if we agree to it.
And Michelle, as far as the timeline goes, did you say that your organization was looking at November as the target for this?
Well, that's based on where we are with your process.
Yes.
So that would mean that language would have to be to the Board of Elections if we're doing this in August, like August 2nd.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
that.
because it has to be 90 days before the election.
Okay,
And so backing into that, it's not a lot of time.
right.
Yeah.
So there's, probably an educational piece and, all that. So thinking about it. Go ahead. Yes, please.
I think I'm more or less committed to it, and I think those of us that were on council did, that we were let the voters decide. I am not going to support it. I'll vote to put it on the ballot, but and I think that's the question is a majority of council going to take a position on this, that they're going to go out and endorse it and hold informational meetings on it. I mean, the moving force behind this is not council. True, it is another organization, so they should be the ones, in my view, and unless the majority of council wants to take a position on it and endorse it. We supported the charter, at least 5 of us, so I could see why we did that, and it impacted the city's operations. This ranked choice voting doesn't impact the city's operations.
Michelle and I have met, and we've talked about the education piece, and I think that because her organization, and correct me if I'm wrong, is willing to do the education piece because they have the experience with it. They have activities that they can invite people to come to.
That's what I get paid for, so y'all don't wanna get me unemployed, do you?
So if we have somebody, have her organization doing the education of the populace, then we can, each of us decide if we would vote yes or no when we go to the ballot box. But getting a charter amendment, I agree, it's important to me that we let the voters decide. So I'm still in the same place I was when we talked about it during the charter review.
Okay. Any other comments about this?
So is it okay? How would you proceed? Like, if Michelle's available to work with on it, to get things put together, schedule, even probably a public hearing. I mean, we could work in conjunction with administration or with council, but how would you see next step?
Michelle, do you think you could create a timeline for what needs to be done when? You know, I mean,
Yes,
I mean-
1,000%, in fact, that's what Gail asked me for, and I've been working on it for sure.
okay,
Yeah, and I also, Gail, keeping in mind what happened with the first bucket from the charter review, I really am building in a chance to have public comment, to workshop some of it as well before it comes up for reading, if that happens.
okay. So when you have that done, we'll notify Vice President Larson or myself, and we'll put it on the agenda so that you can present it publicly.
Beautiful, thank you.
Sure, go ahead.
Unless there are 4 council members that want to endorse this proposal, the city and council should remain neutral in this, and we should not be advocating in favor of passing it or having a role, I believe, in educating the people about it.
Yeah,
Has council traditionally taken a stance on measures that were voted to be put on the ballot? I don't remember that happening previously.
In recent memory, there's only been 2 charter issues that have come up. That was issue 26 that changed the form of government. And some of the council members made contributions to the PAC and spoke out against the change
On an individual basis.
on an individual basis.
So council didn't, in addition to sending it to the ballot, council didn't vote one way or the other to support either of
Well,
those.
What went to the ballot was the citizens' initiative, so council really didn't have any choice but to put that out to the voters. And for the last charter, 5 of us wanted those changes, so yeah, we did. We took on the task of educating the voters about it. But I just don't think that that the city should be in the position of endorsing ranked choice voting and putting on educational seminars for the public. Unless you've got a competing voice speaking out against it.
or unless there's a
4
majority-
council members who
majority
want to
support.
do
Okay,
that.
I think that sounds reasonable to me. I mean, and we don't have to decide that today, but thank you, Michelle,
Thank you,
appreciate
Tom.
that. And look, I know we just passed a bunch of charter amendments, but if something comes up, and you go, wow, there's some flaw that we're working through, I don't ever want to say that we have to wait 10 years to do, another. And that's what the charter says, that we have to take a look at it every 10 years, but we got Addie here because we did a charter amendment in 2022. That was a charter amendment. The clerk of council worked for the mayor. That just, there were some mind-blowing things going on here. But anyway, so just keep that in mind. A council calendar, we went over that. Dog park, is there, so that had been suggested last year as a legislative item. That would be in your committee, but you'd have to decide as the chair,
Well, it's being included in the master parks plan, right? So
master parks plan,
that's my understanding anyways.
but
So I
there's,
think you would just review it as part of that.
but there's work that would need to be done to, I mean, there's no legislation, is there?
Oh, no, that's, I'm just saying that it in the overall plan, I think it
And
is
when's that
being,
gonna?
I don't know,
Yeah.
that's a good question.
Okay,
What was that question?
When is the
yeah, when's the,
master plan coming?
Director
There's a
Gonzalez will know.
public open house.
The 28th of January.
28th.
I would encourage, this is slightly off topic, but I would encourage all of you to meet with, I know you already, but meet with your respective
Chair.
Director.
Directors.
director, yeah. I mean, unless the mayor has an objection.
So easy.
A little different of an experience 4 years ago, but it's always a good thing, just talk to Director Gonzalez and set up a time, and I think that's a really great first thing to do. When you get started, yeah.
I'm not sure that any legislation is necessarily required for the dog park. If the
it's part
mayor
of-
wants to
Yeah,
have it and it doesn't require any expenditure of city funds or the acquisition of property.
well, I imagine it would. If the funds are being spent, it would
Unbudgeted
be,
funds.
right, correct.
Right, and there's nothing in,
Contracts.
yeah, there's not, I mean, it would come to us as a,
Budget item.
as a budget item, yeah. So,
If I could,
please,
personally, I do not support the construction of a dog park. If city council would like for us to construct the dog park, then we'll do it. But that's not something that we're going to take the initiative to do on our own.
you're under no obligation to make a commitment one way or the
I'd
other.
like to
I'm just
at
testing.
least see the parks master plan and,
Right.
the community engagement from that before taking any next steps.
Yes,
I was just gonna echo what you just mentioned. I mean, I think the issue is we have a parks plan. Does it include a dog park or not? And if, I mean, I don't think it's up for council to decide where a dog park goes. I mean, I'd be interested in one. I think we would be, I think it, from a competitive perspective, it's probably a good idea, but I don't know where it sits in the big scheme of things. And I think we would need to understand that. So,
Being a dog owner, you're gonna have to recuse yourself from it. Enough
not a dog owner,
Oh, I've seen that dog at your house enough
your
times.
daughter's
just a grand
You're
dog.
a-
Yeah, it's a grand dog.
Best kind of dog you could have.
Exactly.
Don't have to feed it, don't have to walk it.
Pay for its
Pay for
college.
surgeries.
Oh God, that's a big one.
Moving on, but sticking with animals, deer management, we've been talking about that, and we have a,
Anybody want an update?
Yeah.
Okay, so I spoke to the USDA that does, okay, so last year we sort of left it as no deer management immediately, but we need more data. What we'd like to do is do a surveyed get a sense of really how many deer we have. It could be as high as 800 right now, which is a lot. That's what the ODNR thought. The best practice is to hire USDA, the federal agency, to do, and they actually, instead of doing an aerial survey, which is what we suspected, they would rather do a drive survey. They think they're more accurate because it uses infrared, and they can do it usually when the leaves are off. March is the time that they like to do it. We have a contract from them that has been given to the administration, a timeline to try to get it done in March, at a cost of about $2,200.
That's
So I think it's all pretty good. The mayor has expressed interest in supporting this. So we need to find someone from the administration. There's a timeline that I think I posed today on, I don't know, I mean, it's just a draft. See how we can do it.
That timeline works for me, that March timeline, and I let police and finance know that they can work with you on it.
Great, perfect.
And does this step, doing the additional survey, does that delay any potential next steps, or have we already sort of missed the window for this winter?
Well, there are no next steps. And typically, if you are doing either active deer management, which is shooting deer, or you're doing sterilization, you're doing it in a particular time of year, we'd be looking at making a decision for that within maybe 6 months from now. It's too late to do anything the
That's-
next
That's
month
my
or two.
question. So we're not delaying a potential next step to do this survey.
No, we would probably, I'm not sure based on the price, we'd even need to have legislation to do it. We may wanna have legislation to do it, There's probably gonna be some public forums. I think the administration would have to come, decide who within the city should do it. But I mean, the real thing we need to figure out right now is how many deer do we actually have? I don't wanna say we all feel, but there seems to be an overwhelming majority of people thinking, based on the surveys that have been taken by our residents, we have a lot of deer and people are getting uncomfortable with it. And the more you wait, the deer population increases 30% a year, the number gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and there's gonna be a tipping point where if we don't make a decision now, someone 10 years from now is gonna be making a decision because there's too many deer. And then what you're doing is you're trying to eliminate a lot more deer. So when you try to look at this I mean, nobody wants to kill a deer. Honest to God, nobody wants to do this. But how can we do it so it's as few deer as possible? And the longer you wait, the more deer there are. But this is a conversation. These are my thoughts. These aren't necessarily the thoughts of council or the city. We need to come to some kind of conclusion.
But there may be legislation at some point this year about this.
There might be, and I'm gonna throw this other piece out here. I mean, what the safety committee has talked about is working with other cities on this effort as well. So this is a regional issue. We have regional governments that are already taking part in this. Do we work with those other regions? With these other cities? Let's get the numbers. Let's talk about it. Let's probably do some public forums to get some more information.
All right, well, thank you for that.
I would just add that depending on the, let's say, conduct involved in reducing the deer numbers, there's a chance that it would be at the very least advisable for council to pass legislation authorizing that conduct in the event that it otherwise would violate certain standing city codified ordinances.
Sure. Probably makes sense.
If I euphemismed hard enough on that.
Euphemize the euthanization.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I am really happy to hear the USDA doing that and doing it for 2,200 and getting it done. Because one of the things we talked about in committee time after time was our decision on next step will be based on data. And so we will have the survey data, we'll have the deer vehicle crash data, we'll have the public survey, and we will have carcasses picked up. And that data will give us a picture of what that committee does for next steps. Turn them around, that's what most of it is.
For my little short stint as mayor, I did talk about animal control with our police department. We have a contract with somebody for around $75,000 and they hardly do anything. I mean, it was shocking. They'll pick up a stray dog and take it to, wherever they take it. But they don't do cats and they don't do bats and they don't do windows. It's really hardly anything. So we talked to the police chief in South Euclid, and there is a person there that would be willing to train a person we would hire, and that person would do more of what we think would be, we have possum, we have skunks, we have groundhogs, but okay, and that person is going to report back to the chief, and the chief will report this to our mayor, and hopefully, it might cost a little more, but we really have no animal control at all, not really. So
The police do a lot of it.
they do a lot of it, but even what they do is narrow, and understandably, it's not. Here's a touchy one, council and mayoral salaries. So as part of the Archer report, we were told we were low. There has not been an adjustment since 2004. I wouldn't say to anybody this is like way high priority or anything. And personally, I wouldn't care if I ever got it. But I do think the salary is woefully low, and it is something that we would have to address. There is no COLA or, any kind of other mechanism. It is purely a legislative process.
Could we put a request into the Civil Service Commission just because they're mentioned in the charter?
That's,
Ask for a review from them?
it's outlined in the charter, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah, that's supposed to
so could we start it
That's-
that way?
be what the charter prescribes.
It sounds like an administrative services kind of thing. What do you think?
Well, if the charter says that the Civil Service Commission should have it reviewed, then we should ask them to take a look at it.
I mean, is that all we have to do, is just ask?
I think so. I don't recall.
Given the
specifics of
reason,
the
I just
charter,
wanna,
but-
some of the recent amendments are starting to run together.
Well, and some of them are not together.
Yeah.
Go ahead while he's
I
looking.
think it's a factor that must be considered. And so I would support what Vice President Larson is suggesting, is that we ask the Civil Service Commission to assess what the salaries are and provide a recommendation to the Administrative Services Committee. And in terms of timing, I do think we have time for at least council salaries, because it only has to be before the next election. There is a timing matter, but that's not for 2 years at this point. The next council election. Now, and same for the mayoral election, I believe, and law department can confirm, is that the salaries are locked in for the terms that we're in
Correct.
right now.
And the charter, as amended most recently, contemplates the inclusion. A report from the Civil Service Commission, if presented to council, is one factor that council is required to consider in setting its compensation. So it is not bound by Civil Service Commission's recommendations, and it is only required to consider
As a
the report
consideration.
if Civil Service Commission
Can you make
provides
sure
it.
that they have the Archer reports? 'Cause I don't-
yeah.
I just sent the Archer reports to the new council
Oh,
members.
Great, thank you.
And some other salary information and the salary ordinance. I sent you also the roster of employees
I
and
don't
their
think you guys
titles and
knew
their
this.
salaries.
That's our deputy clerk of council.
Pretty much.
He does. That's the deputy. Do we have any 2025 tabled legislation? Like anything that's,
Severance.
Well, yeah, severance,
Yeah.
but it's not really tabled, it's just
Pending.
pending.
but is there any, anything that? Yes,
I was going to bring it up if we get a chance to talk about our legislative goals. The Complete and Green Streets revised legislation that came through as a recommendation from the Transportation Mobility Committee. It did go to law for their vetting, came back to committee of the whole. And so I'm asking if we can get that on the January 20th calendar.
wait, it's written? It's written?
So we got
Well done.
red lines back from, remind me of the gentleman's name?
Chris Brace.
From Chris Brace. And then, actually, I was just speaking with planning about it yesterday, 2 days ago. We need to roundtable with Public Works and Planning to discuss the red lines that Mr. Brace sent back.
Because those red lines included conversation with Director Zanft and Director Klinkscale. So hopefully they'll confirm their own requests.
Hopefully.
So what are you saying?
Nothing. I'm just saying, we need to circle back and discuss it because we haven't gotten any guidance from the departments on it yet.
Yeah, and I'd like to get this done at least by end of February, because we've been waiting since last August. And this is,
I'm fine with that. I mean,
um,
I didn't realize that was something that was still languishing. That's glad we brought
yeah,
it up.
so whatever law can do to move it along is great.
So we'll put that on the agenda for tomorrow.
Yeah.
Section 111, Councilman Cobb, we need to revisit that. Not this month because it's impractical, but I want to get back on track. The two of you probably should immerse yourself in that, in 111 and the ordinances and the codified ordinance. That section is what governs council, basically.
It's an orientation book.
And
We got
yeah, was that part of the orientation? My bad. Okay, I didn't know. But it's important. It hasn't been. We've probably gone through half of it. I'm guessing. I don't really remember. And we made several modifications. I would say there were several, but we got ways to go. At some point, we'll bring it to the committee of the whole, and we'll go over that. But it's important. There was some really antiquated stuff in there, and there was stuff that was missing, and there was stuff that's not followed, and I mean, it's not terrible, but it's not up to snuff. I have about 10 more things that I'm just gonna table right now. I'm sorry that took so long, but are there any initiatives that anybody thinks they're gonna wanna bring forward early on that they wanna bring up? Yes, please.
I'd like to see the short-term rental legislation
Thank you.
vetted and brought forward. I'd like to see a strengthening of the penalty aspect of rental housing inspections, utilizing Cleveland First as a possible model. Inspectors would be empowered under this case to assess daily fees if the cited repairs are not made, so that we don't get hung up in housing court for months and years when repairs should be made on those rental properties. Those are, but aside from the things we discussed.
And that could be part of a comprehensive thing, but boy, I wouldn't wanna wait till that was done.
No.
Yeah, and under my legislative agenda, I want you to know, I did put short-term rentals. I finished that like 2 years ago. Long story, don't want to tell it, but we need to get that done.
So would I need to bring those two housing issues to a future housing committee meeting?
Well,
Or
we're not gonna have a chair until we
Okay.
make an appointment.
Okay.
So I would suggest that if you wanna move that ahead, you just go ahead and ask now if it's okay, and you can start working on that if you want to. Or do you want the committee to work on it? I mean,
Well, our process would be to see if council is interested
right, but
I'm very much in support of that.
in short-term legislation, short-term rental.
And the Cleveland First model,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
And so are you vice chair housing?
I think I am.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
would be a member, so I see no reason to delay either of those.
and by the way, theoretically, you could meet now.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could meet,
Yeah.
or that could just come to a committee of the whole if we're at that stage.
Well, there's some work to be, the legislation needs to be vetted again by the committee, don't you think?
Short term, absolutely. I mean, we have new members and
Yeah.
and memories. I mean, it's not like a billion things have happened since then.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's not exactly in front of my mind now either. And I was the one that wrote it, so okay.
And the other one, the pub rental housing inspection modeled by Cleveland First would require some committee work.
Okay.
If council agrees to have you guys do that.
Yeah.
And you know what? I'm gonna throw this out there as just for thought. Since I wrote that legislation, I'd say 5 communities that I could think of off the top of my head have just like actually banned it. Not suggesting anything in this moment, but it is a fact. Anybody else wanna bring up?
Well, just in terms of pending legislation, are we gonna discuss severance tonight, or at least what the
No,
timeline or next steps are on that?
Not tonight. But we have pending legislation. I'm waiting to hear from the administration about where they're gonna head.
Would you like for me to share a brief update?
Sure.
So So in talking with the law director and planning director, we agreed that we would engage a third party. The group is named Avison Young, and we are currently working to settle on a scope of services for this engagement. We hope to have that finalized by Friday or Monday. They currently have capacity, and so we are hopeful that they will be able to get us a deliverable within just a couple weeks.
So they're acting in the capacity of an orders rep. So there's a path that we're currently on with MPACT, and they're gonna analyze the zoning, the path, and give the administration feedback?
Yes,
Is that kind of
correct.
what it looks like?
Yeah, and is it possible to share, once the scope of work's been agreed to, what it is, so that we can, when people ask us questions about what are they really doing, that we can share that information?
Absolutely, and I'm happy to give an update in a council meeting, which gets more eyeballs from the community.
Yeah.
At the request of the law department, I was asked to wait until after a scope of services is settled on before re-engaging with impact. And so I have expressed to the law department my desire that we do that as soon as possible. And this afternoon, we had a very productive meeting with both law and planning. And we look forward to, at the latest, the beginning of next week, talking with Mr. Ryan Porter.
So what is there a timeline for you getting the scope of work, doing the hiring? Is this gonna be weeks, months? I mean, what kind of time frame?
Like I said, we anticipate having the scope of work finalized Friday or Monday. And because the group happens to have capacity right now, they're able to immediately start working on it. And they told us on a phone call that they anticipate that they will be able to get us a deliverable within just a couple weeks
Okay,
because of their availability right now. At that point, we'll be able to regroup, evaluate those, and share that with Ryan Porter.
good. Thanks for the clarification.
Do you plan on making recommendations for next steps after you get the report?
Potentially, depending upon what is in it.
Yeah. Because, obviously, we're gonna look into the administration for direction. Can I just make a suggestion? I think we need to do this executive session and kind of, go home. So on the 20th, let's set aside 15 minutes for any legislative ideas that council members might have. And you don't need to take a long period of time. If you have some idea, you just say, hey, this is something I'd like to do, and just get a, if it's something you wanna move on now. It's not, it's something you wanna move on soon, then don't worry about having something on the 20th. And I don't want you to just, like feel pressured, like, oh, I better come up with something, or I won't look busy. I mean, you don't need to do that. But I mean, if there's something you wanna do in the first quarter, and you need, your goal is to go to the law department and actually write something up, let us know. That's all. You just don't want people doing that without informing council. We'll do, set that aside after the 20th. Let's get a motion to move into executive session, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session to consider the appointment of a public official.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All right, Annie, go ahead.
Larson,
Yes.
Cobb,
Aye.
Tosh,
Yes.
DeWitt Boy,
Yes.
Cohen,
Aye.
Kuda.
Aye. Now till 8:58 to see what we were gonna say when we came out of executive session. We have discussed the applicants for the vacant council seat. And we have new members, leadership just appointed. This is a 2-year term. We're taking this very seriously. And we decided to open up the application process again, if we're agreed on that, to the public for a week, 2 weeks. How long do we want to do this?
2 weeks.
I think 2 weeks.
Okay,
Until the 23rd,
Yeah,
20
23rd.
That seems good.
2 Fridays from now.
so today's
Today's the 7th,
7th, so to the 21st?
well, unless you wanted to do to that Friday, which is the 23rd.
Well, we won't actually open it back up till tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
So, so the 8th to the 22nd?
Sure. 22nd midnight.
Can I seek clarification? I mean, I feel like there are some good candidates here. These candidates do not need to reapply. We're just,
Oh, right, thank you for saying that. Yeah, we have 11 candidates that have applied. But we're agreed that we're gonna open the process back up,
2 weeks.
or the application process back up for 2 weeks. And how can we publicize that tomorrow?
Yeah, I'll get communications to something.
You know, cause we don't wanna, wait, what's today,
Today's Wednesday.
Wednesday?
I don't know, I mean, we can have it put out.
Okay,
Should
we give more
should we
attention.
also mention you need to be a resident for at least a year?
Oh, yeah.
yeah. And that it is a 2-year term. Because the last time we did this, it was like a 2-month term. So it's a big difference.
It would be good if it was a blast just by itself. We
Yeah.
can do that.
Yes,
Can we, because time is of the essence, so the week that these come back to us, can we get a meeting on the calendar? So we can,
So you wanna try to get
Discuss
a
this.
meeting on the calendar of the week of the 26th?
Which is Thursday.
And that will give us enough time to review them. And
over the weekend, so the week of the 26th would be ideal, I guess.
At Monday night?
Which are you going to have your admin services on that Monday?
Well, we can kill a bunch of birds
Right.
with, not
So you wanna do your-
that porch phrase. We could do a lot of things that evening.
We may do if we're trying to get the meetings together, we may do a safety committee meeting too. But that's something we
Yeah.
can talk about.
okay, but are we agreed on the process we're gonna use? That we are going to look at the 11 applications, well, we already looked at the 11 applications, so they'll still be considered. The new applicants will be considered, that we'll figure out how many people we wanna interview. And do the interviews in executive session. Are we agreed on that?
Do we wanna pick an interview night now, so it's in the calendar? So those that are applying know that we will have a selective interview night on a particular day. So if we have a meeting on the 26th, just hypothetically, let's say we have a meeting on the 28th scheduled, pulling that date out of thin air,
the 28th is the Parks and Rec info session, so we wouldn't wanna,
we would do a different date. I'm just saying, at least we get a date on the calendar so everybody knows in advance if we're gonna shortlist.
What day is the 22nd?
The
I mean, what
20th,
day of the week is it?
Thursday.
It's a Thursday. So what's the next Monday?
26th.
Okay, is there any,
Well, but that would be if you guys wanted to meet to do your just initial discussion, then you'd have to decide when, after that, you're gonna do that.
First week of February.
I can join by Zoom, but I am going to be in Florida that week with my kids for winter break.
I mean, I think this Zoom thing is
Yeah.
actually great, cause,
Oh, because you
Yeah,
did them
you-
on Zoom?
yeah.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
okay,
cause-
And you can vote.
even better.
I'm fine with all that.
Fine.
Do we have a,
The third, which is a Tuesday, or the fourth? No, let's eliminate Wednesdays from your thoughts, guys.
yeah,
Wednesday's bad for Steve.
right,
Can I ask, I know the 29th, that Thursday following the Monday is a planning commission meeting, but there's no reason why we couldn't do Thursday.
Are they recording planning now?
Yes.
Then we can't.
Oh,
I have a conflict on that day.
Okay, never mind. Back to the
you
next
know what
week, sorry.
what's funny, I almost said, well, if there's a planning commission meeting, how are you gonna?
It's a hard habit to break. They canceled me from the invites,
So
thankfully. I still have them
when is the deadline?
on my calendar.
March 2nd.
No, I'm sorry, the deadline for,
for submitting?
right, yes,
The 22nd, by midnight, on the 22nd.
okay. And we're going to have a council meeting on the
Maybe the
26th,
whole, yeah,
and we'll talk about the applicants at that
Correct.
point. All right,
and on that probably being 7 if we have to do other meetings before that.
okay. Are we gonna meet on the 12th?
Yes. Although we might not have to now,
Well,
unless you would like to make that an admin services meeting.
yes.
Okay.
Because I would like to get through all of these other applications. And I would also like to get the people in to interview for this planning commission.
On the 12th.
If that's possible to get them in on the 12th.
So,
Can
yep,
you
so if you
reach out
wanna
to those
do-
folks?
For planning?
Planning
Yes,
commission.
yeah.
And just as a heads up, there are probably gonna be a couple of pieces of legislation
Correct.
for the 12th. You know, I mean, sorry.
We could, but it's limited enough that you don't necessarily have to have a committee of the whole prior to, you could do your discussions. There's 2 pieces. You could do your discussions in the meeting, just saying.
And we've done it that
So if
way.
you wanna do admin services then at 5:30 on the 12th, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm assuming all of council is gonna want it. Why don't we just call it a committee of the whole?
Okay, great,
meeting?
it's already scheduled
Yeah.
as committee of the whole, perfect.
And if you'll just put on there, an executive session.
Sure thing.
And we'll also discuss, time permitting, the other vacancies that we need to fill.
But then just going back to the council vacancies.
Yes,
So
so the first week of February. We're gonna get out your calendars.
Monday is the 2nd.
Monday is the 2nd, which is
So
when we have our
Tuesday.
meeting, but Tuesday, the 3rd.
Tuesday, how's that?
Works for me.
I'll be on vacation, so.
Right, so you'll, yeah, join me as Dale's.
So, yeah.
Fine,
And what
okay.
time do we normally,
You wanna say 5:30? 6?
could we do
Um,
it?
I would do it earlier, I'd do it 5.
Yeah, I like,
It could be a very long meeting.
5 o'clock? 5
Yeah, I'm
o'clock?
fine with
5
5.
o'clock? Let's join when you can.
Jessica has pain in her face.
Jessica's the only one that has a real job. I'm sorry.
No,
She's-
I'm on vacation.
You know, we could also. Let me
Do
talk
a
to the law
long
department about
Monday.
that
Okay.
afterwards. Okay,
So
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 5
we will
o'clock.
be interviewing people for the vacancy at that point then?
That, correct.
can I go on to other, like for 30 seconds?
Is there planning commission meeting interviews?
That's.
We're gonna
the
try and
12th.
do those next Monday if we can get
If
everyone
we can
lined
get
up.
them lined up.
It's
Oh.
just, right, today, we don't know if who's available when, but
Okay, I'm sorry. That's what you're talking about, sure.
all right. Councilman Cobb, I just wanted to ask you, remember last year we did a meeting of the committee chairs, administrative services? Do you remember what month that was in?
October.
No,
September?
it was early in
Was
the
it early?
year,
It
yes.
wasn't like recently.
So we'll try and get that set up for late in February.
Well, let's find out when it was.
Okay,
Could we
I'll
find
figure
out
it
when it
out,
was
yeah.
last year? And then just, I'm not trying to be pushy on this, but I do want to do it again.
Yeah,
You just can't do it before, planning has to appoint 2 members, and then on the 29th, they'll elect who the chair,
yeah,
the next chair
this won't
is,
be
so,
before.
yeah.
It was February or March. It was early in the year, yeah.
You know what, guys?
Mhm.
The calendars that I have to look at every day,
Okay. Let me see. Okay, so without objection, I'm gonna adjourn this meeting of Committee of the Whole at 9:08. Meeting is adjourned.